And welcome here to another edition of Husker Online Headlines. Happy Friday to you, Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple. Man, Sip, we're busy. It's March.
I know, it's beautiful.
You know, I love it.
I know, it's beautiful. We have a ton of things to talk about all of a sudden. I mean, we could do a 2-hour show.
It's going to be...
Not that I'm in favor of 2-hour shows.
I think most people in their cars can only handle about 35, 40 minutes. That's what we'll shoot for.
All right.
But
let's roll.
Husker Online Headlines here. We bring it to you usually every Friday is our goal. Lots of headlines this week with the start of spring practice. But let's go right to what I think is the biggest headline, the recruiting news of the weekend. So many top visitors. And, you know, we've had a chance to talk to some already. We're going to talk to more, you know, in some of the interviews we've been doing this week here on Husker Online. But you just look at this list of guys, and we're going to talk about Dylan Raiola later on.
Okay.
But man, I mean, this weekend for Matt Rhule, you hate to say how much weight it carries, but it carries a ton of weight.
Well, and it potentially could be very beneficial. Again, we've established that I don't know that they're going to get any big commits this weekend because these high-profile players of this profile just don't commit this early very often, right?
Well, and I think the key is, can you get any of these guys to come back?
Right.
And will this week, because, you know, we've talked to a lot of these guys, and for most of them, this is their first time ever coming to Nebraska.
Right.
And that's not uncommon.
Right.
Like, unless you are tied to a family member here or the football program, you generally don't come here very often just for the heck of it.
Right. I mean, you think we talked to Jacob Smith and Gerard Smith last night, the two kids from Connecticut. I mean, big time players. Now, these are big time players. They've been to Alabama twice. They've been to Notre Dame. I mean, multiple times. They've been to all these other places multiple times, but here they are at Nebraska for the first time. And they said, they're twins. So forgive me if I forget which one said it, but it was actually Gerard, who's an interior defensive lineman. He said as soon as Rhule got the job, bam, Rhule was reaching out to
Omar Hales too.
Yeah, so those guys reached out quick, and he said he characterized this aggression that Nebraska recruited him with, and not in a bad way, in a good way, and that's what I like. Nebraska has to be aggressive, and it has to see what I've been consistent in saying, Sean, is, and I know it's odd that people push back on this to me, but when Nebraska stopped having all conference players, and I mean first team all conference players, plural, that it kind of coincided with the dip. And then it's almost like we've forgotten how important it is to have, okay, how about an All-American or two? How about an All-American or two? Because what's Ohio State producing? What's Michigan producing?
Several
All-Americans.
I mean, think about Michigan. They bring in even a transfer last year, Oluwatimi, and he wins the Outland.
It matters to have players like
that.
I don't know why that. I don't know why that fails to resonate with people. Are they okay with not winning championships? I don't know. I mean, sometimes I wonder.
Well, think about this: the 3 NFL Combine invites for Nebraska. How'd they all come to Nebraska? Think about that real fast.
Okay.
O'Shawn Mathis, Vokalek, and Trey Palmer.
Transfer.
So
yeah,
there hasn't been the type of identification and development at the high school level to get these guys. And
great point, Sean.
Your 3 combine guys were transfer portal additions.
Transfer. Yeah.
So, and then you think about the year before, what was Samori Toure?
Transfer. You got it. Yeah. So no, back to this weekend. Yeah, it's important. It's vitally important. You have, Dylan Raiola coming in, but you have the number 1 offensive tackle in the country. You have the number 1 running back in California. The number 1 offensive tackle in the country is from California.
Brandon Baker, their high school teammates.
Yeah. And then Nathaniel Frazier.
Yes.
The running back.
Modern day high school. Home of Bryce Young. Home of Matt Leinart.
Yeah.
A perennial power program. And, I was able to talk to those guys here, and we're going to talk to them more later on Husker Online. But I was like, you guys have a lot of dealings with Bryce Young. He's like, they've seen him once since he's won the Heisman. But I mean, just think about their high school produced the Heisman.
Yeah. Yeah. Bryce. Yeah. It's amazing.
And
we've talked to the number 1 player in Colorado, Gage Ginther, who's an offensive tackle, Sean. Offensive tackle. That's the guy.
And he's lean.
Yeah. You got to get, I mean, we talk, and I know I'm not gonna get on a soapbox here, but linemen. That's what you get an all conference tackle in here.
Grant Bricks will have a chance to visit with later this weekend. Arguably the number one player in Iowa. He's also a lineman.
Okay.
Projects interior probably. Carter Nelson will be back.
Number one player in
How about
Nebraska.
Carter Nelson? He was at Colorado this week. So
he was.
He just got back from Colorado this week and expected to be at Nebraska, obviously, this weekend. So
I want to tell Nebraska fans, Sean, what they're dealing with, because we talked to Gage Ginther. Gage Ginther, again, the offensive tackle, number one player in Colorado. What did he say to us yesterday? He said all anybody talks about in the state of Colorado right now is Deion Sanders.
And
he said that's all anybody talks about.
Think about this, like Coach Deion, I mean, he's the number one player in Colorado, arguably. I mean, it's one of those years where
Gage Ginther,
you can make a case for 2 or 3 guys, and if you just look at the quality of offers, Gage Ginther has the best offers in Colorado. He's got Tennessee, he's got Penn State, he's got Oklahoma, he's got Nebraska, he's got Prime.
Yeah.
That's kind of, I mean, you got the Rhule Deion factor, and there's an X factor for Nebraska with Ginther because his father, Jonas, played defensive back at Nebraska Kearney.
Right. And is a big Nebraska fan.
So they've got kind of a ace up their sleeve that I'm not even sure the new, I mean, maybe Donovan Raiola probably knew that, but you wonder if Nebraska staff knows that.
I wonder, I mean, it is kind of like a Dylan Raiola, Dominic Raiola situation. It's almost feels like with Gage Ginther that he just acknowledged to us, yeah, my dad's playing a big role in this, and my dad is a huge Nebraska fan. So there's no question that gives Nebraska an advantage. And Gage Ginther also talked about what did he say, Sean? He's for a young kid, he understands the big picture really well. He said, when I think of great football, I think of Big Ten and the SEC. It gives Nebraska advantage over Colorado. Colorado's in this sort of indefinite future.
He said that's going to play a factor.
Yes, it should play a factor.
But will that be settled by the summer? It might be. The future of the Pac-12.
Okay, yeah, it could be. Colorado could be in the Big 12 by then.
Yeah, and I think that's a better fit for Colorado.
I have always felt that.
I mean, if Utah and Arizona State join the Big 12,
Colorado should go.
They
will go. I mean, it's a no-brainer.
They don't, to me, Colorado, Oregon, they don't identify as well, but Utah, Colorado, the Arizona schools, I mean, that's a good mix for Colorado. But Gage Ginther, that's going to be one we'll be watching closely.
Really interesting. Yeah.
Andrew Sprague back again from Kansas City Rockhurst. This is, I believe, his 3rd or 4th trip to Nebraska, his 2nd with Matt Rhule.
Okay.
And this was a guy that your radio co-host Bill Bush initially offered from the previous staff. The coach at Rockers is Kelly Donahoe, who was the coach of Carlos and Khalil Davis back at Blue Springs High School in Missouri. Donahoe is an O'Neill, Nebraska native. So there's a pretty good, connection to Nebraska. But the key with Sprague is, I believe it's his 3rd or 4th trip to Nebraska going forward. So Nebraska has done a really good job of getting him to keep coming back.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean? This is his 3rd trip, by the way.
That's good.
He was up here in January, and he was up here now this weekend, and he came under the previous Nebraska staff back in May. So 3rd visit in 8 or 10 months to Lincoln.
I just like the fact that we just transitioned from Gage Ginther, the best player in Colorado happens to be a tackle, to another tackle, Andrew Sprague.
Best player in Kansas City, arguably.
I mean, this again,
one of the best.
I'll keep harping on it. It's got to start there. It's got to start up front, really both sides.
And you'll have some other key in-state guys here, Davon Hall, Isaiah McMorris. I'm really intrigued about receiver because, what do you do? I mean, my understanding is Nebraska can take 2 to 3 receivers.
Well, they could take more, but that's what you think they're going to take?
That's kind of their pencil in number. Well, you got 2 in-state guys, but what if Donovan Raiola, Dylan Raiola, commits to Nebraska and he's got receivers on the hook with him?
Yeah, I know.
I mean, that's a sticky situation for this staff to manage if you can only take 2 or 3 receivers and you got 2 in the in-state that you've offered already.
Yeah, those are the things. That's why head coaches make a lot of money. You got to manage. Those are the sort of situations that a head coach has to manage. And you know what, Sean? Those decisions are the sort of decisions that make a difference. That why is Nebraska not gotten over the top? There's a lot of reasons, but maybe some of those, maybe one reason is they just haven't managed those type of situations as well as they could.
You got a couple under the radar guys here too. Riley Sunram, who's the #1 player in the state of North Dakota, is here.
Mm-hmm.
And then Thomas Heiberger, who's the #2 player in the state of South Dakota. So, in a lot of years, these are guys you would think Nebraska could get. Michael Boganowski, the #1 player in Kansas, is here.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing. You got the #1 player in Idaho here, Sipple, Gatlin Bear, a receiver. You've got a lot of #1 state players from, states that Nebraska generally can have success in.
Yeah. And that's, again, it's nice. I would think if you're a Nebraska fan, it's nice to know that you can still do this, that you can still, with the prolonged struggle, you can still draw players of this caliber to your campus. You don't have to get them all. I mean, you're not. I mean, it's obviously unrealistic, but the fact that you can still get these guys here. Now, Sean, so what's the total number?
As far as what we've confirmed, and keep in mind, this is just what we've confirmed. There could be more guys here than that, but for the 2024 group, we have 25 visitors confirmed. Actually 26. Ryan Wingo, who's the #1 player in Missouri. The top 2 players in Missouri really were here this weekend. Ryan Wingo and Jaden Riddell. Actually, the top 3 players from Missouri are here. Williams Noarni, Ryan Wingo, and then Jaden Riddell was here at practice on Thursday. Think about that. Missouri of the bordering states is the best state to Nebraska.
The top 3 players.
And the top 3 players from Missouri are here.
See again, I hope Nebraska fans are listening. This is an aggressive approach. Rhule has turned up the aggression. Wouldn't you say? I mean, you can't really say that for the Frost staff was this aggressive. You can't say that. You can say the Riley staff was pretty aggressive.
To pull a weekend off like this, everything has to be aligned.
Yeah.
You have to be connected and everyone's got to be working together. And I mean, it's a lot of work, a lot of management, a lot of organization. Mm-hmm. One questionable thing, I wonder, they mentioned going to the baseball game on Twitter. I don't know if who
the players did.
There's tweets about telling Husker fans to go to the baseball game.
Okay.
So my thought on that is they must be, they're going to give that to kids as an option to go out there because they can. Mm-hmm. not exactly a Chamber of Commerce night to sit out at Haymarket Park.
No, it won't be. It's actually, you don't have to wear a jacket right now, but it'll be. I mean, we're sitting here at noon. It won't be exactly pleasant, but it's not a horrible idea. And maybe those kids can stay in a suite or something. Some of them, I don't know, Sean. It's just pretty amazing what we're talking about, I guess. And I know I keep there's using the word aggressive, but that's what it's got to be.
Looks like Dylan Raiola might be at the baseball game based on this tweet that he quote tweeted from Omar Hales on the screen. But speaking of Dylan Raiola,
yes,
let's move on to headline. Number 2.
We better do that.
Headline number 2: Dylan Raiola schedules an official visit to Georgia for the first weekend in June 2nd. Why is this significant? Well, number 1, it's his first official. Everything he's been doing now is considered an unofficial visit. Official visits, you only get 5 of them. Those are the ones the school can pay for everything and can set up everything and do everything on the school level. And the other thing that's significant about this to me, Steve Sipple, is June 2nd is a long time from now.
Right.
And I think there's this narrative out there that he's a silent commit or could commit sooner rather than later.
Nebraska.
But if you go out and report that you're taking an official on June 2nd, what does that mean?
Well, it means he's not a silent commit to Nebraska. That's got to go away. I don't even think it's prominent at this point. So what's it mean? It means he's taking his recruitment deep into the summer, or into the summer for sure. I'm not saying deep into the summer, but into the summer. This will be his 7th time to Georgia. It'll be his 7th trip.
He's been in Nebraska a lot though, too.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying, I'm not trying to rankle you, Sean. I'm just saying, they've talked, Dominic's talked to me a lot about Georgia. They did some baseball stuff in the state of Georgia last summer, I believe, and they would end up going to Athens, unofficial visits. Now, here we go with an official. Dominic has been quoted now on the record as saying, I mean, man, it's just elite. Everything they do is, he said, everything they do is elite, and it's so competitive. And Dylan likes that competitiveness. So you can imagine, in Kirby, I've read articles about what has Kirby Smart done at Georgia. Why is that program been able to ascend? Well, it's partially that. Like, for instance, they have they have bloody practices on Tuesday, not literally bloody, but they're really, Sean, they're full contact
Which,
Tuesdays.
not to be the old Nebraska guy here, but that's how it probably used to be here at one point.
Oh, it was here, yeah. Full contact Tuesdays are famous down there. And so Kirby, I think, ramped up competition. It's probably very similar to Alabama now in that way. Culture, well, it's maybe surpassed Alabama, but it's similar for sure. So yeah, that's big news. Now, will he officially visit USC? My guess is yes. I think he wants to officially. We're talking about Dylan Raiola. I think he wants to visit Oregon.
He's going out there the 29th. That
April 29th.
Yeah, and
April 29th.
April 29th is, as of now, that's an unofficial. That's the Oregon spring game.
Okay.
You can take an official in April, but that's not, at least as of today, an official. There are very few players, and I talked to Brandon Baker about this because Brandon Baker, the number one tackle in the country, he plans to probably hold out until December. He told me
December.
And we discussed this. Like, there's not a lot of players that carry that kind of leverage.
Meaning they could take it that deep.
Yeah, if you're and no knock on a 3-star type recruit or whatnot, but there's spots. Like, schools will have only so many spots, and you have to know that as a recruit. Like, your seat at the restaurant table could go quickly. You better, if you got a chance to get a seat at the nice restaurant in town and you want to eat there, you better go there.
So if you're Baker, you can wait because they'll reserve a seat.
We're like, yeah, Dylan Raiola, Brandon Baker, they pull out a table from the back if they want to come, and they just put it in the restaurant. Like, remember Goodfellas when he shows up in the restaurant to the back door and they put the table right in the front.
Yeah, just saw
it. That's Dylan Raiola.
Yeah, they're playing that on one of those stations right now that plays movies over and over. So yeah, it was
good
on
movie, by the way.
Pretty good. But yeah, so yeah, the Dylan Raiola thing, you're right. That was pretty big news today that he set that June 2 official visit to Georgia.
And there's some Nebraska fans on the Red Sea Scrolls on a HuskerOnline that have like, doesn't mean that. I mean, I interpret that as he's doing it. Like, why would he schedule that and not want to take the officials?
I think he's going.
I mean, that would, to me, the Georgia people I've talked to from the get-go, their feel from Georgia was that there was going to be a round of officials taken after this spring, tour of visits.
I don't think that. There's a couple things that come to mind, Sean. Again, it's pretty well established at this point, but I know Dominic pretty well. I just don't think he would operate that way. I don't think he'd play that sort of game. What I'm saying is, I don't think they would publicly say they're going to take an official to Georgia knowing that they're not. Well, I don't think they do that. And number two, and this is probably more important, they enjoy this process. And I don't say that in a bad way. They're huge college football fans. They get a chance to go on these official visits and see these programs in a very intimate way and know all the intricacies and talk to Kirby Smart, who's on top of the college football world, talk to Lincoln Riley, go to Nebraska, talk to a program that's desperately trying to get back and wants to lean on him to do it. And by the way, his dad played here and his uncle's here. They don't look at it as, oh God, this is really stressful. They're enjoying this process. So the fact that they're kind of taking it deep doesn't really surprise me.
There is an argument though, like, if he's trying to help the school that he's going to go to, wouldn't you want to be committed a little earlier? Because a lot of guys are going to commit by June.
Good point.
And so
that's a good point.
The bang that he brings to your recruiting class, whoever lands Dylan Raiola, that bang comes with other players. And the longer you go, a lot of those players might be squeezed to make the decisions.
Right. And then you lose them. I understand that. I don't know. I mean, I always get a little uncomfortable with that discussion because what are you doing at that point? You're putting a lot of pressure on Dylan Raiola to be the lead recruiter now. So not only does he have to lead your program back at the quarterback position, by the way, we need you to land a bunch of guys for us. I don't know, Sean. I guess I'm a little bit. I'd be a little protective of the kid in that way. Like, what if they don't get those kids? Then is it Dylan Raiola's fault at that point?
Yeah,
See what I'm saying?
it's a slippery slope though if you're holding spots for him and other guys.
I got it. I understand.
Because
I just sort of cringe when you start down this road of if he commits now, then he can bring in all these other players. Like, is there anything else you want him to do? You want to have him work on the defense too?
his power to reach out to kids is
it's big. I understand that.
It's impactful.
Yeah, I understand.
All right. Headline number 3: spring practice week 1 in the books.
Man,
we've learned a lot. We were in there for like 45 minutes on Thursday, and it felt like mid-season.
Yeah, and it was only the third practice. It was the first practice in pads, and as usual, we're all the media. We try to push things like they've practiced for 3 weeks. Well, it's the third practice. It was the first time in pads. But that said, Tony White, for instance, the new defensive coordinator, was pretty illuminating in just bringing up 2 players that have already flashed in his mind, Malcolm Hartzog and John Bullock. And those John Bullock's a name we just hardly have heard at all.
Creighton Prep and
junior.
His brother Alex is a very good receiver too. Like he's a walk-on receiver, but the Bullock brothers from Prep, tough, fast, athletic kids. Both of them are.
Yeah, so they've moved John Bullock from safety, from a defensive back position down to linebacker. Now, he was hurt, Sean, last year. He hurt himself in camp. And I think it probably slowed him a little bit. Now, he was on special teams. He was a very valuable special teams member. But isn't that interesting now? John, as a junior, walk-on from Creighton Prep, player you're very familiar with, is getting mentioned as a guy who could be an impact player.
When he had played specials, like
he was a special teams player.
Like Grant Taggy, guys like him, they have been valuable. Phelan Sanford, walk-on level special teams guys. But it brings you back. You mentioned Hartzog.
Malcolm Hartzog.
The discussion at safety.
Right.
Because they're saying he's playing a little bit of everything, but my understanding is his trajectory. I can't even say that word.
Trajectory
is safety.
Is that right? Is that right?
Like that's where he might project. I'm going to switch my word because I can't say the other word.
Trajectory. Do it with me, Sean. Trajectory.
There you go. Nice. My tongue wasn't warmed up for that one.
So, hey, what's fascinating. So right away, Tony White, the new defensive coordinator, is talking about players who have flashed, and he brings up Malcolm Hartzog and John Bullock. Hartzog, the former coaching staff obviously loved him. They moved
Tommy Hill out of corner for him.
They moved, after game 4, game 5, Hartzog is injected into the starting lineup, gives up 2 deep balls at Rutgers to a bigger player. Rutgers clearly targeted Malcolm, got him, and that. But you know what that staff said? Just let it go. Let him go. Let him fight through this. They like him that much, Sean, and a lot of it is his intangibles are through the roof good. He is a dude now. I mean, he's an everyday. He shows up every day ready to work. Loves football. They can't, those like Bill Bush can't say enough about just how dialed in he is. You don't got to worry about him, Sean. He's like an employee. You don't have to, like me. He's an employee you don't have to worry about.
And I know sometimes we're hard on Eric Shenander, but you think about some of the diamond in the rough guys he brought to Nebraska: Cam Taylor-Britt, Malcolm Hartzog.
Oh, those are 2 good ones.
I mean, those were under the radar, 3-star under the radar in the bushes guys.
2 good ones, yeah.
And they both could be pros.
Oh, Cam Taylor-Britt is a pro.
I mean,
he's a really good pro. Like, he's a really good pro already.
Mr. Football in class, I believe 2A or 3A in Mississippi. So he was decorated, but it took some. I mean, he was kind of in the backwoods. I mean, you had to go out and find this kid.
Yeah, I'm really surprised we're talking about him to this extent.
Of the 30-some guys they brought in a year ago, he was towards the bottom of the names, like as far as like rankings, and offers.
Yeah, it just shows you sometimes you just don't know for sure. But anyway, he's definitely prominent in the picture now. What would happen if he moves to safety? Quentin Newsom's going to be the one corner. You know that. Now, who's the other corner? That becomes the discussion, right?
Can Omar Brown play corner? That's what he used to play.
I think Omar Brown is very much in the discussion at safety. Now, could you use Marquise Buford at corner when he comes back from his knee injury? Marquise Buford, by the way, started at safety last year, not practicing this spring because of his ACL. But Buford could play corner.
Corey Collier, is he a corner or a safety?
Safety.
So you've got those. I mean,
Tommy Hill is
Tommy
the one you
Hill.
wonder about right away, right?
Braxton Clark, I don't really, because
I mean, don't rule it.
he's been here a long time.
I know. I don't want to rule anybody out, but if he is, if they are talking about moving Hartzog, it does bring up that question. And then you know what they were talking about the other day, and I don't know if you've caught this, Sean. I don't know. You know, we all float around to different interviews that are going on simultaneously. Sometimes they're using a rover, like they're using a third
So
safety.
that could be Miles Farmer.
That could be. They're using a third safety. So I don't know what that's all going to
Because Miles Farmer has a good feel for the game, but some of the
change of direction's the issue there. Sean, change of direction, kind of speed, change of direction. So you might see a little different role for him.
And he did have the offseason.
He was in house arrest for a while.
DUI situation. So yeah, that's not going to be overlooked. So there's you wonder where he's at in the grand scheme of it. He's played a lot of football in Nebraska.
Yeah, I'd like to see what those alignments look like right now. That first.
Yeah, and that was, we got to see. Sometimes they give, you can see groupings and figure it out. We didn't. It was kind of hard to figure out too much.
You saw the one offensive line, and that was, if you help me out here, Sean, that was Turner Corcoran at left. This was just, again, one practice, one part of a practice, but it was Turner Corcoran left tackle, Ethan Piper left guard, Ben Scott center, Noradine Nuili right guard, then Ben Hart right tackle.
And then Prohaska is the wild card when he comes back, but
he's got a green jersey on now. He's practicing, which is a good sign. Number 65 was out there with a green jersey on, Prohaska.
How about the linemen, though? The lack of numbers in the spring. Just 10 scholarship linemen.
Interior D linemen.
No, O linemen.
Oh, O line. Okay, stay with the O line. Yeah.
That, because there's a lot of springs at Nebraska where there's 25 offensive linemen.
There's 14.
14 with one out. And so there's 9 scholarship linemen available and then 4 walk-ons. And that jumped out to me. That has to be the lowest number of walk-on linemen on the roster.
4.
Yeah.
And 14's a pretty low number.
In modern day history, like I've never seen the walk-on number for Nebraska line that low.
Why is it that low?
A lot of things. It's just hard. Like they had, like, Hoskinson's kid came here as a walk-on lineman. He's now a fullback.
Okay.
So you see some of that going on.
Yeah.
But if there's a kid that has the measurables that you would want to walk on here, they're going to get other opportunities. And that's the hard part about the walk-on program.
Yeah, that's the thing. 14 total offensive linemen is a low number. And that strikes you because of what Trev Albert said a couple months ago on the radio, which is the spring game is going to look like a game. Now, you got to think about, do you have enough linemen to play two
full units with some subs?
Thank you. Yeah.
And the way it's set up now, you have 13. Like the Corcorans and those type of players they'd have to play almost the entire spring game.
Right. I just don't know.
I don't know if that's realistic.
That's exactly right. So that's the kind of things, again, a head coach has to kind of, your boss is on the radio talking about how you're going to play a full game or something that looks like a game, but wait a second. Hey, boss, we don't have a lot of offensive linemen, and frankly, we don't have a lot of defensive linemen either.
You might have, and this would not be super popular, but you might have to do a move the ball offense versus defense scrimmage where you start the ball on the 25 and then you have 1s, then 2s, and 3s.
Yeah, and that's fine. If that's the way it goes, I think that'll be an interesting story when April 22 nears and we start to try to figure out what that spring game is going to look like. I don't know. Maybe Matt will just say, no, we'll make it work.
This roster, though, will be small. Like for what we've
smaller.
Seen. It will be around 125-ish players, which
it will be.
That will be one of the smaller rosters we've seen probably since the Callahan era around that time. We know Solich's rosters were huge. Osborne's were big.
Yeah.
Bo pumped it back up. He had to shave it off with Title IX things. And then Moose gave Frost the clearance to add like 20 more players to get back up to 155.
Well, Frost was at 155.
Yeah, ish. And to add 20 more walk-ons, they had to create 20 additional female roster spots for Title IX. So they had like a developmental women's swim team.
Yeah.
And this is not anything that hadn't been published. Henry Cordes from the World Herald did like a story about the measures Nebraska had to do to be compliant with Title IX. And it just, my feel is like those additional 20-ish roster spots are gone now. And really it's more like 30.
Interesting.
But as the walk-on program bared the quality it once did, that's a whole nother show.
Yeah, it's a whole nother show. The other things that we saw in that practice were, I mean, really jumped out at me was, well, I'd say the best looking player from a physical standpoint on a team is Jeff Sims. I mean, it really is eye popping. 6'4", 220. I mean, I
That's
understand.
going to be tough news for you to take back to the Casey Thompson campaign office.
I understand. I understand why coaches would get enamored with that. I mean, with
it looks like Vince Young.
With that, yes, it does.
He looks like
very much looks like Vince Young. That's what it
huge.
looks like. Yeah, he's big. He's a dynamic athlete. And what does Satterfield say? We really like the way he throws the ball. I mean, come on. I mean, when I look at him, I think, man, I bet he can really run. And then Satterfield's up at the podium, Marcus, talking about how well he throws it. You know he can run it. Look at him. I mean, he looks like a thoroughbred. I mean, it's a really interesting picture there. I mean, you have two of your very high-end athletes at quarterback. Heinrich's like that too. But, you know, it's good.
Chubba too.
Chubba's a good looking.
I mean, Chubba runs well. Logan runs well.
Yeah, all those guys. Yeah.
I mean, Torres is like the only one. And did you see that there's an Ole Miss transfer too at quarterback?
Jack Woke.
And
I don't know if that's how you pronounce it. Woche.
He came from IMG Academy.
Yeah, he walk on.
But that one kind of, I mean, I'm sure it was published on Twitter, but I just didn't remember seeing. I mean, that one
was kind of slid under the radar, but Shawnee's a walk on.
Yeah, but I mean, some IMG Academy, Ole Miss. It's not like he came.
I think he threw 9 passes at Ole Miss. Either at IMG or Ole Miss, one of the two. But anyway, yeah, it's a good looking group there for sure. I'm trying to think what else. Well, I'll tell you what else jumped out at me is Arik Gilbert. I mean, Arik Gilbert.
I thought he was a left tackle.
By the way, thank you, Megan. There's the quarterbacks. Arik Gilbert. I mean, there was a little thought in my mind a couple weeks ago when Matt Rhule was talking about Arik Gilbert saying he weighed 260, right? But still ran fast.
I thought it was 280.
Okay, 280. All right. So I thought, what goes through your mind? Oh, okay. Did he report out of shape? No, he didn't. You see him at practice, he's not out of shape. He's in shape. He looks great.
He looked like a left tackle.
Yeah, but he looks great.
Yeah.
I mean, and I know you hate it when I bring up Bill Bush, but Bush coached him at LSU.
Oh, I don't.
And he said that, yeah, he did things that the coaches were kind of flabbergasted by.
Oh, he's gifted. Look at him. Look. Oh, that's on the. I'm sorry. I thought 60,
I thought you got excited. Sean.
I thought 63 was Gilbert there.
No, he's 89. Arik Gilbert's 89. People get familiar with him fast. So now again, fascinating. Satterfield, Marcus, talking about playing 3 tight ends, 13 personnel. I mean,
who's the third one?
Well, my guess is Bonner a lot. You'd play him, maneuver him around, move him in line.
Bonner is special. Like he's got ability. He had that terrible injury and
broke his leg,
femur.
In high school.
He was ejected from a vehicle.
Yeah, got in a car accident. So, yeah, my vision immediately went to you'd play those 2 big hosses, Fedoni and Arik Gilbert, and then have Bonner in there as 6'3", 220 pounder that you can move around. And then 13 personnel creates a lot of headaches in the running game, for instance, for a defense because you move. I don't know. It just creates headaches because you can move those guys around.
All right, headline number 4. I want to talk Matt Rhule because we've kind of been we've kind of been able to go in the kitchen now a little bit and see a little bit more Matt Rhule behind the stove
in the kitchen
and see him in action. And immediately we're waiting in the holding tank, the reporter holding tank, the lobby there on the north lobby. And I observed this immediately. Every player, when they came down the stairs, they like checked in like they were signing into something. And then they did a mouthpiece check. And then they had to turn around to Jay Terry and, make sure that their back pad was properly covered on their uniform and they were geared up with their socks and everything properly. And, like,
Good.
what's the big that is? I've never seen anybody do that before.
Not here. I don't know that I've seen that, and that's good of you to see that. I didn't even see him doing that. It's interesting.
And Jay Terry was like, mouthpiece, and like the guy had it. Like, I mean, that's a direct order. He's not just doing that. Like, he is told you need to check every guy for a mouthpiece.
Excellent.
And you sign them in, make sure they're here.
I like it from the standpoint of I've always, I have high regard for this program, Sean. I really do. I mean, I've covered it for almost 30 years, and I always, you know what I appreciate about Rhule that I didn't necessarily appreciate about Frost as the time went on. Rhule, I think, really respects the magnitude of the program. Like he talked about how he became sort of, maybe emotional is a little too strong, but just seeing that on the helmet. He said, like, on a personal note, I was out there and just seeing those iconic helmets. You know what? This program does mean something to him from that standpoint. And I've always been a little protective of it. If I were an AD, I'd want a coach to understand. Now, this is a big time operation, and it needs to be treated as such. Bill Callahan, I thought, did that really well, really well. Big time operation. Treat it like that. And I think Rhule is doing a great job of that so far.
Well, here's just a couple nuggets. Like Nathaniel Frazier from Modern Day, he said to me, he's like, man, when I made my tweet that I was coming to Nebraska, I had never had a tweet that even came close to the engagement of that tweet.
Yeah, well, the fan base is the fan base.
He said it had over 100,000 views. And another one of the guys said is crazy. Like, even driving by the McDonald's, they had Husker logos and stickers on the window at McDonald's here. And, for a California guy, that's like, whoa. I mean, because
wait till they get immersed in it. I mean, they'll understand it to a point. Now, you can't come in for 1 weekend and fully understand it, but you get an idea of it. And that's the thing why that spring game becomes such a valuable recruiting tool, because those kids will go to a spring game practice and they'll see an atmosphere that's better than many fall atmospheres at even Big Ten teams. I mean, Nebraska's spring game atmosphere is much better than some of the Big Ten atmospheres that we go to. Illinois,
Northwestern,
Purdue, a lot of times,
even Minnesota,
to a certain extent,
Minnesota's hit and miss.
Yeah.
But like Nathaniel Frazier even is like, because when I was researching about coming out to Nebraska, I couldn't believe the sellout streak. Like he goes, they've sold out every game like since 1962.
Oh, the fans here are critical.
And Brandon Baker says, he goes, what was the record again last year?
Right.
Exactly. And I said it was 4-8. And he said, and they sold out every game still. I'm like, yeah,
that's fascinating.
Like, I think, a lot of people don't. So we live in it every day. We don't appreciate like the magnitude of that streak.
I do.
And there
don't
are
lump me into that. I
younger colleagues of ours in the media that poo-poo it. They want to get rid of it. And I don't understand that.
Don't get me started.
You know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And they call it a fake streak. And it's not a fake streak.
No, not really. I mean,
they've been creative to save it along, but it's still remarkable.
Oh my God, is it remarkable? And it is critical. And that's why Matt Rhule at the beginning of when he addressed us after winter conditioning, had that press conference, the first thing he did was thank the fans. You can't, and Trev Alberts does a great job of always acknowledging the importance of the fans. We got to take care of the fans. The fans are critical part of the discussion. There's a lot of kids that you just don't even have a prayer of getting if you don't have that level of interest here.
Well, it's just remarkable. Like I think about it. I once did an interview with a news publication in India, and no joke, a writer contacted me because they were fascinated about the sellout streak. And they're like, how is a state with this population fill a stadium like this for that many years? Like,
it's incredible love
it's
affair.
A phenomenon.
Yeah, it's part of our fabric is what it is, and the state's fabric. And Rhule, back to Rhule, embraces it. He doesn't stiff arm it like some. Let's face it. There's a few coaches we've had here that didn't fully embrace it, and I would say he fully embraced
the fan power is the biggest asset of this program.
It is.
Period.
100%.
Without the fans, what is Nebraska right now?
It's Purdue.
Yeah, it's bad.
Yeah.
It's
Well, not that Purdue's bad. I mean, they've become a pretty good football program, but you're right. I mean, it's not even it's a shadow of what it is.
all right. Final headline, final thoughts on Pro Day for Nebraska. We were hoping to catch up with Garrett Nelson a little bit more, but we did talk to him after Pro Day. We talked to Caleb Tanner. Trey Palmer was at Pro Day. We visited with him. Chancellor Brewington had a chance to catch up with him, and Travis Vokalek. So 5 players were there at the Nebraska Pro Day. They also separated, the small school Pro Day. They did that after the Nebraska Pro Day, so the state colleges could have, their guys in a separate Pro Day workout at Nebraska. So a couple new twists that Matt Rhule brought into the Pro Day. But it was good to see those guys and get a feel for how their draft process might go.
Oh yeah, and I thought they performed well. Garrett Nelson came out of it pleased with his performance, and he should be. You saw him; he looked great. I mean, he got himself ready in a big way. I think he looked powerful. When I watched him run the 40, the word that came into my mind was powerful. That was a powerful 40. That's a big man moving fast. And Sean, if he can't play in the NFL, all it does to me is demonstrates how difficult it is to get in the NFL. Now, Chancellor Brewington is another guy, big long shot to get in the NFL, but man, he looked good. Chancellor Brewington.
He wanted to come back for his 7th year.
Yeah, that was a little side note that was fascinating. He said that he would have come back for a 7th year, but the NCAA denied his waiver request. He was hurt 2 years at Northern Arizona. One was the COVID year, so I guess that didn't count. Yeah, I mean, now I don't get into ogling grown men, but look at Garrett. I mean, that's he trained hard for this, obviously, and he was impressive. I thought that Trey was impressive. Trey didn't run a 40.
We didn't get times, and I know people are but they don't put out an official time.
They don't do it now.
It's every scout runs their own watch,
right?
And where we were at, you could run a watch, but you're at a bad angle. Like,
oh god, yeah, that would have been really unofficial.
You have to be right at the finish line to run a true clock.
Yeah, I don't think. Running our cell phone clock would be
well. I used to have if we could have been closer, I could have had my stopwatch. I have but it's not accurate.
No.
And I'm not going to put inaccurate times out for my cell phone.
No.
At a bad angle.
No. I think Trey Palmer wanted to show, well, I know because he told us, he wanted to participate mainly in running the routes, catching balls from Matt Masker, who was the quarterback, who looked pretty good, by the way, throwing the ball. And he, some people might look at Trey and say, well, he runs a great vertical and he can fly by a corner, but how's he run routes? Does he run crisp routes or crispy routes, as he calls them? And he did. I mean, he looked good. He's a good route runner, and he wanted to show that to those scouts. So I think he did a good job. Oliver Martin, again, big long shot, Sean. I mean, let's not pretend Oliver Martin's got a great shot to make it in the league.
His broad jump was one of the most impressive broad jumps I've ever seen in person.
11-2. He went 11-2 in the broad jump. I was astounded by it. And the guys there clapped. They gave him applause. So yeah, that was good. Caleb Tanner's a guy to watch, I think, in this whole process. He was up to 237. He played at about 222. So he put on some weight, and he looks dynamic. Again, probably not a guy that'll get drafted, but could make a roster.
So that broad jump, to give you some perspective on that, I think
Oliver Martin's broad jump.
At the NFL Combine, that would have ranked 4th.
Jeez, there you go.
And you can't really fudge a broad jump. I mean,
no.
a 40, I think there's a lot of questions about times, but a broad jump's a broad jump. The best broad jump was Julius Brents from Kansas State at corner. He went 11.6.
Yeah.
Deonte Banks from Maryland went 11.4. Then Jalen Hyatt, a wide receiver from Tennessee, went 11.3. Then you've got 3 players that did 11.2. So
yeah,
that's an elite mark.
Yeah, and he ran well too. And I don't know what his 40, Oliver Martin's 40 was, but he was ripping.
His vertical was over 40. I think it was
40 in the vertical too.
41, I believe.
41. And that's, if you're over 36, you're in strange territory for the human race.
Now at the Combine, there were about 10 or 15 over 40 this year. That's a lot. Jartavius Martin from Illinois, he went 44 inches at the Combine.
That's ridiculous. So yeah, I thought Now, here's the downer, and this is not a knock on Trent Hickson or Brock Bando. They didn't participate. They got jobs and they're getting on with their lives. No offensive lineman at Nebraska's pro day.
And no hand in the dirt D lineman.
No hand in the dirt D lineman.
Like Devin Drew's just not going to do pros, I'm guessing.
Apparently not. So there you go. I mean, any way you shake it, that's not a great sign. But it continues with what I will continue to emphasize. They have to solve that piece, Sean. And if you're really honest with yourself about this current Nebraska team, they don't have enough beef. Not on defense. Not on defense. Maybe you could convince me on offense, but the offensive line, I have an open mind about that group, but man, they're a little light up front on defense, and that's teams will pick up on that pretty quick.
I'm not convinced you can just get a guy from the portal. Because guess who wants a big guy that can play defense?
I know.
Everybody.
Everybody, yeah.
I mean, and the NIL, there's a lot of things that go into that. And Nebraska was fortunate to get O'Shawn Mathis, but he was quality, did his job.
He was quality.
But it wasn't like, Trey Palmer was a home run from the portal.
Oh, yeah. O'Shawn was fine. He was good. There's no way you can say he
didn't change
the pro.
Like, he didn't change the record, but like Trey Palmer changed the record books.
I know, but here's what I think about O'Shawn. I think we're going to be talking about a guy that plays on Sunday for a while.
And yeah, people don't know O'Shawn that well because he only did the one interview in Ireland all season.
He shut him off. He didn't talk the other day. He didn't talk.
Did he?
He didn't meet with the media now. And I've tried to reach out to O'Shawn, and I hear nothing. Just doesn't do interviews apparently.
But when I did, he was great and
super nice guy. That's the thing. It's possible that, he was sort of critical of something when
Ireland, I think he questioned like the team quitting or the way they played in Ireland.
Yeah, something.
The context got, you know how it goes.
Yeah, and Mickey wasn't happy with it. It was some. I think it was some subsequent of Ireland, by the way, because Mickey wasn't happy with what O'Shawn said. So maybe what we're getting at here, Sean, is O'Shawn just shut it down, and he hasn't talked since, which is fine. He's gonna keep his mind on business. Clearly, now he looked good the other day. Clearly, he's trained well. He's trying to. Hey, Sean, he's trying to get in the NFL, and I bet he will. I think he's got a good shot to play in that league, real good shot to play in that league. He's invited to the combine and had a decent combine. Not great, but good enough.
Yeah, the question from Nebraska as we wrap up pro day talk. Will they get 2, 3, or 4 draft? I don't see 5, but
2, 3, or 4.
I think 2 is for sure. 3, decent chance. 4, absolute best case.
Yeah.
And Vokalek and Garrett Nelson are the fringe guys. I think O'Shawn and Trey get drafted, and I think Vokalek falls later.
Close. He didn't run the 40 because of a stress fracture in his foot suffered against Iowa. He's still recovering from a little bit.
Oh, and the X factor on him is the medical. Like when they go to the combine, when they poke and do those checkups, like how's his body? Because he's dealt with some bad feet stuff.
Yeah.
And how will he come out of the medical side of
it?
And that, there's a lot of things on that, but great show. Great coverage, more stuff coming on Husker Online this weekend. We've got a great spring special right now, a monthly special. Get 4 months of Husker Online for $10. 4 months for $10. Limited time spring football special. So get online and check out Husker Online. We're going to have full coverage, a lot more interviews. Steve Sipple coming from the recruiting weekend. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
All right. Thanks for joining us here on another edition of Husker Headlines. For Steve Sipple, I'm Sean Callahan.